the button.
Cobus
We
has
are going
clicked the
live.
button, yes.
We're not going to stare at each other.
Last time, Cobus was expecting me to click the button and I didn't click the button. Okay,
Yes.
we are live. Tweet is sent out. We have a
Darko,
guest
take it
today.
away.
Hello. Hello and welcome to another Wednesday edition of, well, the only edition of DevBeardOps. This is a weekly show where my good buddy Cobus and myself get to talk about technology, the cloud, beards.
Bit of DevOps.
DevOps, yeah, all those things. And we mentioned beards, but hey, it's the beard on the inside that counts. And speaking of lack of beards, Ian, welcome. We have our first guest outside of AWS ever. We have Ian Mckay. Hopefully I pronounced that last name correctly because we were discussing, is it Mckay or something else? Mckay. We have Ian Mckay, AWS hero, a person who has created plethora of amazing tools for all of the folks out there who do things with infrastructure as code. And I'm sure you have seen some of the tools he has been creating or have basically been using. So Ian, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
And it is Mckay, actually.
Mckay.
Mckay, aye.
Scottish heritage.
Okay, Mckay. Okay, see, we were wrong. Not the first time, but Ian, tell us who you are and why should we care?
Yeah, so my name's Ian Mckay. I'm from Sydney, Australia. So it's 9 p.m. my time right now. Lit one, but not too bad. I work at a company called Kablamo, which is a consultancy and AWS partner in Australia. And I'm also happen to be an AWS community hero and partner network ambassador, which means I get to talk to a lot of the service teams. I get to have a bit of extra insights into what's coming up sometimes, a little bit of inside knowledge, but most of the time it's just community advocacy. So it's blog posts, presentations just like this, and open source projects in particular. So that's what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I know you for your open source projects and the things you build for AWS. And actually, I've seen you on Twitter and your projects for things regarding CloudFormation, but from time to time, I'm surprised to see like, oh, that's also Ian's. Jesus. So you are the ever-present bringer of new tools here. And toys, yes. Cobus, but tell us who you are as well, by the way. We should also, guess, introduce ourselves.
Okay. Well, I'm Cobus Bernard. I am based in Cape Town. So what is the phrase Darko used earlier? I'm the... What is it? Hemispherically...
No. So yes, okay. So we had this discussion. Usually on this show, it's me and somebody else and Cobus, and usually that somebody else is from the northern hemisphere, and Cobus is the lone hemispherical minority. And now I am the hemispherical minority because I have two folks here from the south hemisphere, and they have summer right now. Weird people.
Yes.
You have summer in what is it? April? Jesus, we just had snow.
It's how it should be. Summer at the start of the year.
Exactly.
In any case, getting back to who I am a developer advocate like Darko. I used to be on the EMEA team and covered Sub-Saharan Africa. I am now on a more globally focused team. So no longer looking after a specific region, and a background in software development and sysadmin and what then became DevOps. I even had a title of DevOps engineer as well as DevOps team lead at some point. And yeah, I play with a lot of automation and cloud.
Yeah. I'm basically the same thing as Cobus. I'm just basically a carbon copy of what he does on the north. I cover in the EMEA team, I cover Central Eastern Europe. I'm based in Berlin, Germany. I'm originally hailing from Serbia, hence the weird name. Now, I think we should make this. Ian, you have the honor to be the first part of this tradition, first person to enjoy this tradition. Every guest we get on this show, we will be asking the first question, and the first question is the question nobody has an answer for, ever. It's not 42.
Oh no.
What is DevOps?
What is DevOps? Oh, what a loaded question.
Go ahead. Tell us what you think DevOps is.
So to me, DevOps is a really, it's a bit of a methodology about the way that you interact within your company to have developers, operational people, even designers, UI people, management, getting them all on the same page, all interacting and streamlining that entire process, you should be completely invisible or seamlessly invisible to the entire operation. And you should let that whole process just be perfect. And when that goes wrong, you're the person that has to fix it.
Correct. Good answer. So DevOps is not just a box of YAML. It's not just a CI/CD pipeline, I guess.
Not a role. It's not an object. That's not a product you can buy off the shelf. It doesn't have a price tag.
Disagree. You can buy it in 5 units, and 10 units gets you a discount.
Yeah.
If you get 10 units,
you always need at least 5 units of DevOps.
Okay, but wait, is it
high
per
watermark
team?
billing?
Okay, excellent. So thank you for answering the question, and you actually answered it correctly. Well, actually, there's no correct answer. There are incorrect answers, but there are everything else is just up in the air. Cool. So what are we going to be talking about today? I think the thing.
Well, firstly, we're going to say welcome to our viewers, because I do see we've got a couple of people here chatting with us. So welcome, everybody. And yes, S3 15 years later, it has been interesting.
Yeah. We see people coming here. Also, we didn't do this at the start, but let us know if the audio is good. We always struggle with that. So just confirm if all of 3 of us are kind of equalish on the sound, that nobody's clipping or too loud, too soft. So we may improve that. And howdy to all. Okay, so today's topic is, because we have Ian here, we're going to definitely be talking about infrastructure as code. So, Cobus, before we jump into Ian, tell us what you think infrastructure as code is.
Hopefully I get this right, because I did a YouTube video a long time ago and I re-recorded it 50 times to get it what I felt correct. It's hilarious. So infrastructure as code is the practice of treating your infrastructure like you do your code. Basically, what that boils down to is you have text files of some kind that define your infrastructure. And from there, you do the same as you do with your code. You put it in some kind of central repository. You've got peer reviews. You've got automated pipelines that make sure that the infrastructure is, or the code that you submitted is actually correct. It does what it's supposed to by using tests. And then ultimately, it automatically rolls out your infrastructure to get it out in your, well, wherever you host your infrastructure in an automated fashion to create it so that you don't go around clicking things and doing hope-driven development where you hope you do the same thing to production as you did in development and break it.
Exactly. So instead of clicking, you type things and they produce infrastructure. And thankfully with the scope of the infrastructure, what it is right now, the cloud, or everything's an API out there. It's relatively easy to bunch up your entire infrastructure in a code. So that is pretty good. So do you agree with that, Ian, or did we say something wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the term's very loaded, though.
It is.
When you say infrastructure as code, people think, oh, what programming language is it? Is it in JavaScript? Is it in Python?
It can be.
It can be.
It can be, but not always. I think it's a bit of a loaded term. I prefer codified infra rather than infra as code. It's about having that infrastructure in a way that is formatted.
Yeah.
It is version controlled in most instances, and you can really analyze what that desired state is. And I think that's another interesting part of it, is that infra as code is about a desired state about where you want your infrastructure, rather than a list of instructions. I want to create this, create this, create this. It's like, no, none of that. I want these things to be over here. Yeah. You sort it out.
Yeah, because
thing.
Yeah, in the past it was more of I will call an SDK or an API that will create something for me. And I had discussions with people about this when I talked about CloudFormation, like, well, Darko, this is nothing new. Like, I used to write bash scripts to provision my virtual machines. It's not the same thing. It's basically you converting a click into an API call rather than doing something properly, right? So it's different. It's a declarative way, or describing or setting up a desired state how you wish things to look. So excellent point. So Ian, how did you start? I mean, I will take a wild guess here and assume you started with CloudFormation, but I may be very wrong. So tell us how your adventure with infrastructure as code started.
Wow. In matter of fact, as far as pure infrastructure as code, I'm pretty sure my first experience of that was with a tool called VMware vSphere Orchestrator, which is an orchestration tool for the old classic VMware ESXi hosts. So still in virtualization land, but thinking more around the on-prem systems, your local host, the things you can actually touch. Not that they don't exist in the AWS land, it's just that someone will block you before you try and touch them. So that's where I got my start in infrastructure as code and really automating that process. But as far as in AWS land, yes, absolutely. CloudFormation was my first infrastructure as code tool. I think that would be around about 2012 where I first used it. So pretty early on in its lifetime. It was a very different type of tool there. So there was a lot more limitations than there are now. It's grown so much, and it's just over 10-year life cycle now. So
yeah, and like when I joined AWS, it was just JSON. Like Terraform was, CloudFormation was purely JSON, and for me that was unthinkable.
50K limit JSON. Let's be very clear here.
Yes. So I'll trash CloudFormation, old CloudFormation a bit here. 50 kilobytes size limit JSON, and JSON is a very not space friendly the format. A lot of extra fluff you don't necessarily need. And for me, the biggest problem there as a person who did the development was I couldn't do comments. I couldn't you can do comments in assembly code, but not in JSON. And that was my problem. I couldn't put a little thing here saying, "Oh, this is doing that," or if you wanted to write a script, like for example, booting up an EC2 instance with user data in JSON, escaping all of your lines of code for a shell script was just it was not fun. So yeah, all CloudFormation was difficult to say the least. But then YAML came in, and a lot of great things are improving on that side. So, and here's a question to the audience. Tell us what your first infrastructure as code framework was. We want to know, how did you start doing this? Have you started? Have you changed? Let us know in the chat.
Maybe speaking of the chat here, I see that we've got someone asking about Ansible versus Terraform. The last question was, does Ansible manage state? So in a nutshell, yes, you can use Ansible for spinning up your infrastructure, similar as you would use Ansible for, let's say, configuring some servers. I actually used to do that for quite a while, but then stopped. The main reason I stopped there was that Ansible was the way it ran, and please, this might have changed because our last time I did that was about 2016, I think, is that you would define all your infrastructure and then it would run through it. And then next time you go, it'd run through it again and just make sure and apply the things. And the challenge with that I found is that being written in Python, if you mess something up, like variables and things, it would go variable unset, but then it would continue.
Okay.
And then you would get into very interesting infrastructure states. Now, this was me not having the right tooling and not understanding Python well enough.
Yep.
But basically, I got to a point, and also I had all my infrastructure one massive, big Ansible project. And that led to some unhappiness. So yes, you can use it for infrastructure. At least my experience was try one of the other tools that's specifically designed for it, not like almost shoehorn, because it felt like Ansible was focused on server configuration and configuration management. Then they built modules for AWS and other cloud providers as well on top of it. And the model was slightly different because with configuration management on the server, you just rerun it to keep changing it back to the state that it was. And that's just configuring things. It's not like, if you change the state like with a database, it's gone. So
I've not played with the latest Ansible things, like with your Ansible towers and whatnot, but I know in the old days, you would create an Ansible script to create an EC2 instance, you would run it. You would run it again, it will create another EC2 instance. So that was a problem for me. It didn't keep the state properly, right? So yeah, that's a fair point. But here's the thing: like Terraform was a great thing for me, at least during the old times of CloudFormation. Terraform was very nice to read and very nice to write, and I'm all for it. So Ian, you are the father of a lot of great tools out there, a lot of open source, amazing tooling out there, and what was your first one, and how did you go about to do it?
In AWS tools or
In
open
AWS.
source tools generally?
Let's talk about AWS in this case. Maybe that
Okay.
will be more in line with people want to hear.
So my first big tool was a tool called Console Recorder for AWS.
Yeah.
Now, this actually came out of a bit of a frustration that I had, which was I was actually looking through the Bodo docs for Media Live, and I was creating a channel. This is when Media Live just came out and things like that. And I was going through it, and this was 6 pages long, and I was trying to figure out exactly what features there were. This happens to still be one of the longest calls in the entire ecosystem, by the way, because it's just so many programmatic properties for media output. But I was going through this, and I thought, wow, this is taken maybe like an hour to figure out, and I can do this so quickly through the console. And I'd done a tool previously to that called Wildfire, which was just a browser automation tool. And I realized that the console was actually doing these requests.
Yep.
It was constructing this entire payload in a format that's very similar, but not always the same to the public APIs, such as Bodo. Yep. So I looked at the requests and I really started to figure out these are the values for the settings that I needed, and why can't I just grab this data and then put it into my Bodo 3 script? And I did that, and it worked. So I thought, how can I do this faster next time? How can I do this for everything?
Okay.
And so I started this long journey into looking at the AWS calls that the console was doing, and really seeing how similar those were. And they were very similar. There were some differences, and there were some times that I completely just didn't understand anything about what the output was spitting out. It was gibberish. It was back in the time where you had GWT wire and a lot of funky JSON formats and things like that. But I started to make this project, and I started to record these calls and map them to what I was using. So it started off with Bodo 3.
Yeah.
But then I started to think, well, okay, what are the other things that this is useful for? And then I started to add CloudFormation support and Terraform support, and every single one of those SDKs, even like the CLI or the JS SDK, and all those different languages. So what ended up happening is I made this huge repository of all the various calls that were in the ecosystem. This took me about 4 months to do properly for the first run, and that was to get to something like 60 or 70% of the CloudFormation support, which is the main thing I was targeting at the time. Eventually, I hit 100%, but since then it's taken a bit of a hit. But that was at 100% coverage at one point. And so this tool was really there to help other developers who are in the same situation as me really understand what was going on when you did those console clicks. Yeah. Really understand, this is what these properties map to. This is what the CloudFormation for this looks like. And it was received very positively on social once people started to get a hold of it. And people think, wow, this is really amazing. Like, what can you do with these things? And how can I use this? And it's a very simple application. It's deployed as a browser plugin. You can install it just straight from the Chrome store or the Firefox add-on store or Edge store, whatever that's called these days. Run that, hit record, do your console action, and then hit stop recording. And then you'll see the resulting outputs of that in Bodo 3, in CloudFormation, all of those things.
Yeah. It's a wonderful tool. Like, so just to explain to people, instead of going ahead and spending time writing your CloudFormation template, especially as we have a couple of new people here, like QWERTY Rabbit, they want to learn CloudFormation. Instead of trying to figure out what exact things you need to create for a specific object with Console Recorder, you can just get the plugin, go to the click the record button on the plugin, launch an EC2 instance or whatever you want to do, and it will generate CloudFormation template for you, among other things. So it's not just CloudFormation, but it's a really great way to get started quickly. So love that tool. I know when I had to do something quick, like for example, I'm relatively experienced with CloudFormation, but even when it comes to writing more complex things, I need to spend time and do them. And I just used your plugin just to go ahead and just get a skeleton of what I want to do and just use that and upgrade it. So it's a great thing.
I mean, I would have loved to use it. It's one of those, I somehow just missed it completely back when I did a lot of infras code with Terraform. And my experience was literally run Terraform, look at the state file, look at AWS, eyeball it, and then edit the state file. So it's obviously very dangerous. If you're starting out with Terraform, please do not edit the state file by hand. It can lead to many bad things. I always tell people, if you want to know what experience is the ability to tell someone all the ways something can break and won't work. So I've got a lot of experience with Terraform state files.
That could be a problem.
Dangerous, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Just
I ended up having. Before I had a utility script that before I edited the state file, which was stored in S3, so I just had something like tf get state file, a helper script. It would copy the state file, immediately copy a backup one with a timestamp on it, and then back that up elsewhere before I was allowed to touch the state file, because I've made a couple of mistakes like direct edits once, and no.
Yeah, be careful with that. Just to answer a couple of questions here. There's a question from somebody came in from Yogesh. Can you do that for Terraform? And I understand that Console Recorder does it for Terraform as well, right? It exports some Terraform code.
Absolutely, yeah. So let me just pull it up. I'm seeing it currently supports Python, CloudFormation, Terraform, Troposphere, the TypeScript version of CDK in its primitive form. I'll touch on that in a second. The CLI, JavaScript, Go SDK version 1, and IAM with some limitations. Yeah,
so a lot of things there. I think it's an excellent little tool. So what the fascinating thing about it, like if you go ahead and launch an EC2 instance, and I show this to people, the tool literally just tracks all the API calls made, right? That's my uneducated opinion, because if you click if you go through the recording of launching an EC2 instance, if you check out the Python example, it will give you all of those describe calls that happen, like describing the VPCs and whatnot. So it's just amazing and fun. Like when I was in premium support, I've actually learned that our browsers literally just make API calls. Like they just call API endpoints, and we found hidden APIs, some non-publicly documented APIs. You can find them if you go through the console. Sometimes if they're exposed to see like, oh, this exists. So
there are some out there, and by doing this process, there's definitely some I found.
Yeah, exactly. So
most of these are helper sort of APIs. They do a bit of aggregate function. So maybe it does 3 calls under the hood and tries to summarize it for you, things like that. So but one of the things there is that this is not something that is a recommended approach to record these API calls. In fact, I'm still at the whim of any changes that happen to the consoles when they update. They're usually updating network calls and things like that. So I don't expect AWS service teams to consult me just because I created a tool. It's on me. It's whenever there's a change, I endeavor to try and get onto that, make sure that service is updated, make sure that the console recorder tool can see those new calls as they were.
Yeah, so it's like you've approached this in a very weird way, because we expect APIs never to change, or APIs should not change, but you're kind of the outsider here, just trying to latch on to APIs, which it's a fair point. Before we get onto the evolution of this entire thing, because console recorder evolved into something much better, there's a couple questions here from Dominic. Could you advise the best testing tool for infrastructure as code, in your opinion, for CloudFormation and Terraform?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kobus.
No. I want to hear yours.
No.
Come on.
So it depends on what kind of testing you're doing. If you're going to test things like the syntax and the sanity of your script, it depends. There is a great tool out there. It's an extension for VS Code, and it's called CloudFormation Lint, or CFN Lint. And that will really help you during the authoring of those templates. So make sure that you're doing the right things. Make sure that you're not providing nonsensical values, wrong data types. It's really good to protect you from those weird things. Even before you commit it to your source code, even before you upload your stack, it knows about those certain rules that should be within your template and will alert them to you straight away with just an underline in your editor. Fantastic template.
It's a wonderful thing. I instruct people to use that as much as possible. Actually, if you get the AWS plugin for CloudFormation on VS Code, it comes with a linter built in, and it also gives you the ability to quickly create templates. So let me try to actually do this. I really want to show this thing to people because we have a lot of folks here who are trying to get started with CloudFormation. So just let me share my thing here. Look at me turning up Visual Studio. Yeah.
Oh, while you're doing that, so just for those to explain why this is important, there are certain validation rules for certain resources that you tend to only be able to assert at execution time. So a good example of this is if you create a security group, you can't have a dash in the name, you can only have underscores. Whereas some other AWS resources, you can have dashes. And typically, when you're doing things like creating a security group with a dash, locally in your code, it'll happily accept it, and then you upload your CloudFormation template, and then you get the error. And then you're like in that very slow feedback loop of upload template, run it, oh, I made a typo, or I didn't know about the naming convention, those kind of things. And these kind of tools help you find those kind of issues because they have some of those built in.
Exactly. And now I've installed the CloudFormation plugin for VS Code, and what you do is go change the format of the file to YAML, for example. And one of the things you can do here is just start. Boom. It will create the entire thing for you when it comes to like the skeleton of your template. If you want to go ahead and create like a resource, you can actually go here and do like EC2 instance. Boom. It creates all the necessary things you need to do. Well, not all the necessary, but like some baseline for all the parameters that you should have on an EC2 instance. So an excellent thing, and as Ian says, this thing contains CF and lint, and it will complain if you do bad code. So, and for Terraform, Kobus, what about Terraform? You've done a lot with Terraform.
Terraform, there are some open source frameworks. Okay, let's start without anything else. You've just got Terraform. So by default, it knows what attributes there are on the different resources that you're busy creating. Yeah. So actually, when you try and set an attribute that doesn't exist, when you run Terraform plan, it'll tell you, hey, I can't set this. So it's a runtime error you get back immediately. You also get plugins for Visual Studio Code that'll also tell you and highlight and say, listen, you're trying to set an attribute that's not there, code completion, etc. But then when it gets to the actual testing of it, then you tend to shift over to like non-Terraform specific tools. And I've seen this mostly with the kind of like infrastructure testing where you get to the whole, where you run whatever it is that creates the infrastructure, and then you run a set of certs against it to verify that the infrastructure was created the way you expect it to. So, for example, if you use, what's the Ruby tool again?
Inspect.
There we go.
Inspect.
Inspect's got a lot of like where you say expect something, and you can list like the port and the specific resource being created and all of that. And I found that useful as a final step for almost like integration testing for your infrastructure. Because at the end of the day, what I've found is like a lot of the tools will help you with the syntax and help you with the code and make sure that there aren't any like those kind of mistakes there. But at the end of the day, until you've instantiated the infrastructure, you don't know if it's been created correctly or not. So that's where you want to put some additional tooling in and testing in to make sure that it works.
Yeah, fair point. And there's comments here. Some ZBC says that CloudFormation was difficult to get into. Terraform was much easier. We're not arguing which one is better in this case. It's just like if you ask us which one is better, yes. It doesn't matter which one suits you the most. That one you should use. So just go ahead. As long as it's supported, okay.
The advice there is use at least 2 different tools. So CloudFormation and CDK, CloudFormation and Terraform, Terraform and CDK, etc. Just use at least 2 of them because that's the way you'll find out which one fits your mental model the best.
Them.
Because different people think in different ways. For example, for me, Terraform just fit my mental model very well. While I use CDK, it just feels like Terraform works better for me because of my experience and the things that I did in the past, etc.
Yep. Excellent point. Okay, so Ian, you had console recorder, but then it turned into something else. I'm not sure if this is a direct evolution of console recorder to something else.
It actually is, yeah.
But I need to ask you a question here before we get into the actual product or tool. Have you used CloudFormer?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd be interested to see who else in the chat has used CloudFormer or even knows what it is.
Yeah. Do you, chat, know what CloudFormer is? Have you ever used CloudFormer? And tell us how you liked it. A Santos says he has used CloudFormer. So CloudFormer, for people who have not heard of it before, as Yogesh, is a tool that, well, I think it still is a tool. I'm not sure if it
was a tool.
Have they completely removed it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it was a tool in beta for all the time that would basically spin up a tool on an EC2 instance, go through your database account, and produce a CloudFormation template from your existing resources. It was extremely clunky. It didn't work. It was just like, I tried it once or twice. It was just like, nah.
It could actually generate, I remember using it when it was just launched, and it would generate CloudFormation templates that could not execute. As in literally, you ran it and it couldn't create the infrastructure. It said there were mistakes in like syntax and, not syntax, naming convention issues, etc.
Yep. So from that perspective, it was kind of a failed experiment, but we tried. But then this gentleman here created something called Former 2. Tell us what Former 2 is, Ian.
So Former 2, you can think about it as the reverse process of the console recorder. So instead of having to go, I want to record some things, I then have to go into the console and do, puddle around and recreate all those resources. The evolution of it was actually that someone was talking to me about console recorder and said, oh, but can this work on the resources that I already have there? Because I have a bunch of resources that are already there and I don't want to have all my developers learn to always record their code and things like that, always record their console. And so I said, well, no, but that's something that really should exist, shouldn't it? And I'd used CloudFormer in the past, and I was really not happy with it. I wasn't happy that it provisioned resources in the AWS account. I wasn't happy that it was out of date. It only spat out JSON, only supported about 40 resources, and it broke a lot of the time. Okay. And the experience was not that enjoyable at the time anyway. So I decided, I've done this already once. Let's do this again. And I started the Former 2 project. Okay. Now the Former 2 project looks at your account and uses the published APIs and does a bunch of, essentially what it boils down to is list and describe calls, looks at your infrastructure and thinks, what would be the infrastructure as code to recreate these resources? So if I want to go describe EC2 instances, and I get a bunch of EC2 instances and their properties and things like that, what is the CloudFormation that would have made that? What is the Terraform that would have made that? CDK, Troposphere, all those things. And so I went through that exact same process again of going through the mappings, running a bunch of describe calls, and then for each person that runs this, spits out a miniature console, I guess you could call it, of the resources that you're in your account. Yeah. And then you could select those resources, pick which ones are relevant for a template that you want to construct, add them, generate the template, and that would be your template. Yep. So this was crazy at the time. I thought, this is what it needs to be. This is what this should be.
Can you show us? Like we have your asking here, hey, demo please. And I think this is the thing that needs a demo. So Ian, let us know once you have we will pop up your screen as soon as you have shared it, and get ready for seeing how this thing works. It's a wonderful thing. So I'm going to share your screen right now. Okay,
sure thing.
All right, can you just zoom in a bit so we can see it?
Yeah, sure thing.
Better. Thank you. Okay, take us through.
The first thing we do, go to former2.com. Former2.com is a standalone application. It does never It doesn't have any sort of APIs on the back end. It's basically just serving static pages and JavaScript. And that's important to note because of the security concerns that you might have.
Yeah.
If you're coming to this for the first time, you'll be presented with this introduction screen. And this basically just tells you a bit about Forma 2 and a little bit about how it works. Notably, you do still have to install a browser extension on this. And this is a more lightweight version of the browser extension. The reason this exists is because not all AWS services are set up to receive SDK requests from JavaScript. They don't have the cause headers, for those who don't know what they are. But essentially, it's not really set up. It's not optimized for those things. But this extension basically just overrides those cause headers and says, I know what I'm doing. I am a trusted person. Let me do those requests. So depending upon whether you're on Google Chrome or Firefox or Edge, Safari's coming because Max, you can install one of these browser extensions and you can basically just hit it and then hit install from whatever the application store you're using, and then it'll just install by itself.
Yep.
Once you've done that, you can hit continue and you can enter in your IAM credentials. So these are credentials that it will use to scan your account. Now, two things here. One, I'm not receiving these credentials. These are stored locally in your browser. There's no external services with Forma 2.
Very good. Very important to point that out. Right?
Very important to point that out. So no requests are being sent to a Forma 2 website. If you can actually look at the network requests yourself, they're all going to AWS endpoints. That's it. They're just locally signed requests. The other thing you should always do is make sure that these credentials are scoped down. And I recommend the read-only access role, the policy, on that dedicated IAM user, or you can use a session token if you have temporary sessions, or you can have an assumed role ARN if you need to do that. Depends on the way that your infrastructure is basically set up. But for me, I'm just using an IAM user. It's restricted to read-only access, so that's all I really need.
Okay.
And after you've done that, that's basically it for the setup. Parameters, not required.
Yeah.
They're just for the way that you enter in the stack. Settings, although you should have a look at them and have a look around, that's not required.
Good.
So the moment that you've set that up for the first time, that'll be stored locally in your browser's cache. And the next time you visit the site or you hit dashboard, you'll come here. And this is just a listing of everything that is supported by CloudFormation, Terraform, things like that. So let's begin. Let's say you wanted to, for example, codify a Lambda function. You've created the Lambda function locally in your console, and you say, oh, but I want to have the infrastructure as code version of that for now.
Yep.
You would click on Lambda, and then you'll get a list of the Lambda resources that exist in your account. Not just the functions, but everything that's related to it. Permissions, aliases, versions, everything that exists as CloudFormation, Terraform, it will exist here.
Yeah.
So let's say I wanted to take this function called something. I can have a look at its properties within my account. Nothing in here is sensitive. It's just this is my junk account. And I can add this, and this is actually an interesting thing. What it's actually found is that there are related resources to this. So there is a permission that allows some external service to call that function. So I'll say, yes, I want to add that to my stack. Once I go, and I can go around to all the different services that I want. I can go into VPC, find my VPC. VPC has a lot of resources, by the way.
It does.
I can add a VPC to my account and find all the subnets, all the VPC associations, all the gateways, things like that. Once I'm done with that, I just hit this blue generate button up the top, and now I'm done.
Boom.
And it is incredible how much data you can come out of this. So this is that Lambda function that we just hit, that something function.
Yeah.
And it's showing the code, the role, the runtime. But what's very important here is that you see this little get at here? It's actually referencing the Lambda function resource that's just been created there.
Yeah.
So not only is it finding related functions, it's actually connecting them together in the same template.
It's amazing. It basically just it doesn't hard code things, right? It just doesn't read like the APIs. It introduces the logic of referencing things. So I think that's just wow.
So we have a look at our rat table. It's referencing the VPC. We have a look at our DHCP associations. It's referencing the VPC. All those different details.
Yeah, amazing. So we have a ask here from Max Payne Life. Can you show us the Terraform output?
Yes, absolutely. So this is the CloudFormation output, and this is the Terraform output. It looks roughly the same, but it's in the HCL language. Yep. So again, it has all the different associations. So we are referencing using the HCL language type, the ARN of the previous function, and as well as all the other resources that we just had.
Yep.
Same goes for Terraform. Troposphere. Same goes for the CDK in TypeScript language.
It's using the primitives only, right? In this case,
and this is using the primitives only. So anything with a CFN prefix, is a primitive. The reason that I'm not using the higher level constructs is because they are an amalgamation of different resources, and that gets a bit funny when you're picking and matching just individual resources. You can have a resource that's part of both things, and how do you really resolve that? So
excellent. So I want to see something, and this is I haven't tried out there. Diagram. What does the diagram look like in this case? I know CloudFormation does diagrams, but they're iffy. So okay.
So diagram's a bit experimental. Hence the little beta tag.
Okay.
Essentially, what this is an embedded version of what you might know as Draw.io or Diagrams.net. This is fully embedded. It's not actually going to Draw.io. It's a self-contained version.
Yeah.
And the idea behind this is that it would start to build up that diagram as you created it. And then you can export these using the standard methods that Draw.io does.
Wonderful. And for everybody listening, you can actually get this software if you just register. No, it's free. It's open source. So Ian will send you a box of this software, and you need to install it for 15 floppy disks.
What happened last time?
Yeah.
Just remember what happened last time. I made a joke about a sponsor, and then we lost like 20 people off the stream.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah. This software comes in shareware. So you just need to send a registration card with $10 inside. Yeah.
Showing age. It's available on 2 Cows.
Oh wow! I know 2 Cows. I remember what 2 Cows is. Excellent. Ian, this looks amazing. And there's a couple of questions here, asking about Python CDK versions. And in regards to that, this is open source, right?
This is absolutely open source.
Do you accept pull requests?
Absolutely. Yep. I have probably about, 20 people that have contributed to this project in various different ways.
Yeah.
And, pull requests are amazing. Issues are just as good. If you find something that is not quite right, if you think something should have done something and it didn't do quite what you expected, raise an issue. I'm really appreciative of every time that kind of happens.
Yeah.
For that, and the GitHub right there is in the link.
So this
for those security conscious people in the chat, both the browser extension and the Forma 2 software itself is open source and deployable locally. So you can run this, and I actually do this for my own development. You can just hit localhost or serve this on a local
that's nice.
HTTP server, something like that, and it'll work the exact same way. The browser extension, by default, if it sees localhost, it will serve the request. If it sees Forma 2, it will serve the request. If you host it somewhere else, there's some instructions that just changes some of the security requirements for your own sake. But yeah, essentially, you can run this yourself completely void of any network connectivity apart from to AWS itself, and that will work perfectly.
You, sir, deserve much more praise for this than you're
Oh
giving.
yeah,
given.
many beers.
Many beers. One day we'll come to Sydney, or you'll come to wherever we are, and have drinks with us.
Hopefully at reInvent one day. I would love to attend reInvent as an employee.
Yes,
I've only been there once.
That's a unique position right there.
We'll have a we'll have a bunch of Fosters when we get there. Do you drink Foster still in Australia? Is that like a thing?
Ooh, depends on what region you're from.
Oh, okay. Because I know
beer wars.
Yeah, I know Foster's was the only Australian beer you can get in my country. Yeah, that was the expensive beer, like the most expensive beer you can buy. So we have a couple of questions before we continue.
Absolutely.
Is there any limits related to the number of resources in this lovely thing here?
No. You can have massive accounts. I've noticed that if you start to get to say 20,000 resources in your account, it slows down a little. I've had some people come up to me and say, it doesn't work for this use case. I'm looking at their list calls and they're saying 30,000 versions of task definitions and things like that from ECS. And maybe you should clean some of those up. So it is actually trying to enumerate your entire account. So if you hit the little scan button up here, it goes through and does a scan of everything in your account that is CloudFormationable, I guess, or Terraformable, or something that is infrastructure as code. Of which there are 126 types of services that are in that sort of scope right now. So if you hit that, it makes hundreds, sometimes thousands of calls to figure out exactly what's in your account and how you can make those requests. If you don't hit that, it'll basically load this for the services that you click on. So when I clicked on Lambda just now, it just loaded it for Lambda. But if you hit that scan button, it'll preload everything for you, so you can just browse around.
I mean, we could actually even see it now because your audio had a glitch and your video started to stutter as well as it was saturated.
Oh, great. Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
And mind you, we are at different parts of the world, all three of us. Like, we are very geographically separated at this moment. So still not have introduced this the faster propagation of electrons. Okay, so ZBC, here's a great way to do some diagrams. Of course, it's a beta feature. It will not do everything perfectly, but if it can get you started, I think it's a long way out there.
But just quickly, a nice tip here. I actually had to deal with that about 2 weeks ago, which is how do I find all the EC2 instances inside my AWS account across all regions?
Yeah.
And why this was fun is like I've got multiple accounts linked in an organization and I have to find all of them. So on a per account level, go to Resource Manager. There's you can bulk add tags, and how it works is that it allows you to first search for resources by type and by region, and you can select all regions. It's super useful if you need to find things. So just go in there and then search for things, because the search option then allows you to click through to each of the individual resources.
Cool. So a question from Gridnock. Does it work with local stack? I'm not sure what that means.
So local stack is a way of, I guess, mocking your environment, your AWS environment. It creates local services for that. By itself, it's only going to hit AWS endpoints, and there are some security requirements that make sure that that does happen.
Okay.
You can feel free to clone the repo yourself and just alter the probably. Trying to think. It probably shouldn't be too hard. You basically just need to alter the SDK endpoints when they are called. But absolutely, it will work with local stack, assuming that the local stack versions are compliant with whatever's going on.
The beauty of open source.
Yeah.
If you spend some time, you can make it what you want. So
remember that local stack doesn't support every service. So if you hit scan account, it's definitely going to spit back at you and say this doesn't exist. But yeah, there's a lot of great features that sort of come as an add-on or as a consequence of this. One of them's on the screen here, where CloudFormation import was a feature that was released, I believe, late 2019, if I'm remembering correctly. And that allows you to take resources that were previously created by yourself and import them into an individual stack. And so I introduced that functionality into Forma 2 itself. So if I hit this little import button here, it'll warn me that there's a couple of resources that are not CloudFormation importable yet, because that's a restriction of CloudFormation. But if I go import stack and I set a deletion policy of retain, that's a requirement of doing the import job.
The import one.
It'll go ahead and do everything for me if I want to. So that includes creating the change set, uploading the stack, and putting it all into a CloudFormation stack for you. And that's to alleviate the need to figure out how to change your template, figure out what. Okay, I think there's some permissions issues there. But
if you have added your keys who are read only, you would not be able to create a change set, right? So depending on what kind of a keys you set up,
you can download that template. Let me just do that real quick. And open it in Visual Studio Code, and it'll give you that that stack, including the properties that you'll need for importing, because you'll need to specify this when you import your stack. Live demo, and it will modify the template that's generated to include those deletion policies, because they are needed for import. So you can take this, import it under your own access keys, things like that. Use these properties because they're the ones that's going to be needed for your import properties, and then everything else is done for you.
Yep. Wow, amazing.
But I mean, just to explain those, the retain properties there for those not familiar with it, it's normally very important when you deal with databases. Why?
Yeah, so the retain policy there is actually a bit of a safety feature for those importing stacks, because the retention policy specifies that if you delete your CloudFormation stack, what is going to happen to those resources? Because by default, those resources get deleted. Now, if you're importing and you're doing this as a test to see what that stack's going to look like, and you say, you know what, I don't want to do that, and I want to delete the stack, what it's actually going to do is delete those resources for you, which could be a very bad day for you. And this is why Cobus says that this is commonly used on things like databases, because you never want to delete your database. So often you put a deletion policy of retain on that resource, such that when the CloudFormation stack gets deleted, that policy will still stay there. And it's no longer managed by the stack anymore, but it is still there. Your data is still safe. So when you perform an import, CloudFormation will force you to be explicit about what you're doing with these resources, just as a safety mechanism. And I think that's really good design for what it's worth.
Exactly. You want to be careful not to delete those databases and those S3 buckets that contain data in them. So a good safety mechanism.
That feeling when you're watching your automation tool go like, it's busy applying a change, and why is it taking so long to delete this production data?
Cobus has a story about you can,
like I said, experience.
Yes, you can sum it up in a single sentence, like 4,875 rows affected. So
it's 500,000.
500,000 rows affected. Yeah, so be careful with that, and this kind of prevents you from doing those things. Ian, I think this is just wonderful. And a lot of people seen here. There's a bunch of questions here, like what are some challenges when developing Forma 2? Does it do multiple regions, or do you do only a single region at a time? So can you import based on tags, for example?
So the way to do that is actually to do a search for those tags. So because I've already done a scan, I can actually do that search. So if I wanted to dog food myself a bit here and say just Forma 2, it's actually going to show all the infrastructure that I have in this account that relates to Forma 2 itself. So that's things like the publisher, which I use to upload to the S3 bucket, the S3 bucket itself, a CloudFront distribution for Forma 2, and some records in a hosted zone for that. So very simplified architecture for that.
Yeah. And when it comes to multiple regions, do you have to do them separately or?
Currently, yes. That is a feature request that I think someone raised though, so
Okay,
it's
there we
on
go.
the roadmap.
Keep on going to the GitHub page. It's in the chat, and if you missed it, it's GitHub. Well, actually, let me just paste it in again. I think there. Go there, add your issues, comments, pull requests if you want to contribute to this piece of software. And this tool, actually, I was a big proponent of like, oh, never click, throw your mouse away, right? But to be honest, like with tools such as this, for the people who are novices or are early in their careers of building things in CloudFormation, Terraform, CK, whatnot, and you feel much more comfortable by using your mouse, just go ahead, click, create, do all of those things, use Former 2
learn.
Yeah. This will help you learn things. I think it's unmistakably amazing tool just for learning, if anything. So an amazing thing. And for some questions we haven't answered here, like how did you go up in developing this and all those things, we will be answering all of those things next week. So
cliffhanger. Dun dun
cliffhanger.
dun.
Yes, we're sorry. We hate doing cliffhangers, but we're reaching slowly up to the hour, and we want to give all the answers the right amount of justification or proper answers. So join us next week at the same time. Ian will be joining us as well. So we have a lot of more tools to cover with Ian. Ian is, again, there's a list of tools he has built regarding CloudFormation, regarding infrastructure as code, regarding some other things. His latest tool, I Am Live or EM Live, I don't know, is just the thing. So, Ian, what can I say? Before we go,
Follow him on Twitter. That's what you can say.
That's what I wanted to say. So, this thing here. Make sure to give Ian a follow on Twitter. Check out his GitHub page. I'm not sure where you can find him, Carrier Pigeon or something. So, make sure to give him a follow. Check out his projects. And is there anything you want to shill before we leave today?
No,
like something
it.
new. That's it. Excellent.
That's it.
If you're in Australia, make sure to buy this man a beer when you see him. Not sure which one. Let's say Foster's. On top of that, join us next week at the same place, at the same time. So next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central European time. The same time South African time. We're on the same time zone, Cobus, right? No.
At the moment, yes, because we don't do time zones.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, daylight savings. Sorry.
Daylight savings. Yeah, and 9 p.m. Australian time or West Australian time. No,
East Australia.
And also,
East Australia.
Yeah, Australia's got multiple time zones. It gets very funky, I believe. I think you've got one that runs on the half hour as well.
Yeah. We actually have one that runs on the quarter hour.
Is
Lord
it
Howe Island.
South Australia? Is it South Australia? Or
No,
no.
Lord Howe Island runs on the quarter time, I'm pretty sure. I might be on the half time, but there is one that runs in the quarter time. I do remember that.
Yeah.
That's introducing a whole new problem, which we will
run your service on UTC. You'll thank me later.
Run your services on UTC. End of story. On Unix time. Just that.
And just quickly for those that joined halfway through today's session, if you look, I need to point down here. You can see the Not Quibbles Not Darko YouTube channel. We automatically streamed there as well. So the video is available immediately after each stream as well if you want to go rewatch portions of it or if you missed something.
Yeah. If you missed this, if you missed any of the previous week's stream, we talk about DevOps, technology, code testing, infrastructure as code, all things jokes related. Dad jokes, really bad dad jokes. Speaking of that, I said this one to Cobus a few weeks back, but I need to repeat it.
Oh, yes.
Do you?
Why don't they play poker in the savannah? Because there's a lot of cheetahs.
And in case you're wondering, is where do you store all your dad jokes?
I don't know.
In the database.
The most premium content here on Twitch.
It's just this is this is what they pay us for. Thank you all, Ian. Thank you very much. It's been a massive pleasure having you here. We're gonna have you again here next week. You're not out of the woods yet, so we get to talk more about this. And everybody else, join us next week, same place, same time, so we can continue on some lovely open source tooling, infrastructure as code, and whatever else DevOps related. Thank you for joining DevBeardOps, and we will see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Cheers.